Hey guys, Magna back here for more Community Starcraft 2. And as we can see on the screen, today's lesson is about scouting in Terran versus Protoss. And one special note that I am making here is just letting you know that even though we're looking at scouting information, it may not be present in the replay, but I will cover all the things that you need to talk about, or rather that you need to think about when you're scouting these people. So basically scouting is going to be like figuring out what your opponent is doing and knowing the right reactions you need to make to kind of counter what they're doing. So it says in order to make the right units, but it's really in order to make the right decisions we need to know what our opponent is doing, because something like a blink all-in is totally different than if they took a fast third base. So you need to figure out ways to find that information out. It's not always as easy as just dropping a scan too, so this is going to be pretty advanced. We'll go ahead and jump into the game here, and we're going to take a look at this game from the perspective of Daishi. And he's fighting San, who is a very good Protoss. And Daishi is a very good Terran as well, just not quite on San's level right now, but very underrated Terran, I have to say. So we're just going to basically be watching him run his build, and I don't want to be on his selection because that will make us sick. But, so what we're going to see is, of course, the normal stuff. Go ahead and start a depot on 10. I'm going to fast forward up to a point where things start to matter. What we're going to see most of the time out of Pro Terrans is they're going to open Reaper, because Reaper is a really good scout, and it can be annoying enough to force them to keep a unit back at home, but it's mostly for the information. But this time Daishi's not going to do that. There's no gas coming down here, so it's not going to be a Reaper opener. He's just basically going to scout with as minimal things as possible. So the first thing he's going to do, he's going to check for proxies with his SCV, and proxies are really, really annoying if you don't get on top of those. So just scout around your natural area, maybe scout around your third like he's doing here, look out for any proxy gateways and stuff like that. That can be really irritating, but that's what he's looking for. So he's going to send this SCV down. Then after that, you can just send it over to their base to figure out what's going on. So that's exactly what he's going to do. Back home, starting Marines. This may actually be a factory opener out of Daishi, which is what it's really looking like so far. So we'll talk about, I try to vary these up to the point where there's different openers so that you can see how to scout if you opt to open this way. So Daishi looking for proxies. He's going to come down here. He's going to check for a Nexus right away to see if there's a Nexus first. You'll note that he did see a probe walking away here. So this is another important piece of information, because proxies are a very real thing from Protoss especially. So that if he's proxying, say like a Stargate or something, you need to keep tabs on this and say, okay, I know I saw a probe over here, and if that probe doesn't show up at my base anytime soon, then it's got to be out on the map doing something funny. So keep track of things like that. So the probe comes back. He's just going to start blocking this with an engineering bay, which is a really powerful scouting tool, since it forces them to produce units and it takes them a long time to clear this. So what you do is you start the engineering bay, you let it just kind of sit there about halfway done, or as much energy as you can, as much hit points as you can get on there as possible, and then you can just cancel it. The SCV is going to come in here and scout and figure out what's going on, but the fact that he sees no second gas, there's only one gas, basically means that the Protoss is either going to be going for some type of gateway attack, like really aggressive 4-gate or something like that, or much more commonly is an expansion, so that this engineering bay is actually worth it. So the one gas is a big tell. If there were two gas, then that could start opening it up for things like one base blink, Stargate, DTs. That stuff you can reaffirm later on with scans and with continued scouting of SCVs and stuff around the map. So for right now, the one gas being shown before expansion is very telling to say it's either a gateway timing, and he can just produce mines or extra bunkers or something like that to hold it off if he doesn't see a Nexus come down after this is cleared, or it's just going to be for a faster Nexus. So I hope I'm not just dumping too much information on you, but that's all the stuff you need to be kind of learning and getting used to. So this SCV can walk away, but once he cancels this, which he does right now, you can turn this back around and see if a Nexus starts coming down right away, which on the production tab we know that it is. I guess he's just figuring that it is, because early gateway attacks are really not very common at this level of play. So in the meantime, Daishi's taking his own expansion, getting a factory up, which is really fast, probably going to be for something like Hellions or Mines. And the next point you're going to want to scan if you don't know what's going on. So you do want to reaffirm that this actually is a Nexus. It's something Daishi's being a little bit lazy about, but let's assume that we know it's there. You do want to scan at about maybe 5:30 or 6 minutes to verify what kind of tech the Protoss is doing. So if he has a Twilight Council down before anything else, that's very, very often going to mean either DTs or Blink. So you do need to prepare for stuff like that. Most commonly it is going to be Robo. Sometimes it is Stargate though, so you do need to verify later on when your orbital reaches that amount of energy. So you can see it's 445 roughly right now. He has enough for a scan, but he's not going to use it yet. The next scan that comes up is going to be the one he's going to want to use. Unless he finds out something else in between then, but that's pretty hard to do considering it's hard to get into a Protoss base with any units by this point, unless you do have a Reaper out. So that's kind of one of the reasons people like to open Reaper so much. So SCV coming down here, you do always want this bunker anyway, just because some type of little random gateway attack, you don't want that to deal too much damage. So the bunker is very standard. And Starport is going to be the choice for Daishi right now. So this Starport could be part of his build as far as figuring out what's going on. So here's one thing to note. Because he's opening up with his quicker factory and the Widowmine drop, which is what this is going to turn into, the Starport doesn't make any sense for anything else. If they open for a quick Twilight Council, which is what we were wondering what was going on, then the Twilight Council can be its own, or rather the mines can be their own quick counter to Blink. And this won't matter if they have Robo, that doesn't change your reactions. With the Stargate, you can just put a mine back in your mineral line or something. So this is an opener that doesn't require as much scouting because it takes care of things you can't scout through various other methods. So that's another thing you can do. You can either be really active about your scouting and just directly react to what they're doing, or you can kind of run a little bit more manipulative builds that kind of rule out different things because you're going to get an advantage on that anyway. So mines and marines coming down right now. You can see probably just want to burrow that here just for the time being until you can pick it up in a medevac, but he's being really passive about that. And there we go. So remember we were talking about the next scan energy that he has, he's going to drop it. It was actually off of this command center. He did drop it, and now he can affirm that this is Blink. So he can proceed with his medevac drop, rather with his Widowmine drop here, without worrying too much about it being scouted. And especially in lower leagues, if you can get a good drop-off here, if they're going for Twilight Council first, that's going to be a big win for you. And then back at home, you can kind of keep Widowmines kind of dispersed a little bit in common Blink areas. So he knows everything that's going on right now, and he knows exactly what he's supposed to do about it. So yeah, and just having that information is such a key to dealing with this. And this is another cute little thing that he could do here, is if he catches a stalker just kind of meandering around, maybe going into a common Blink location, he could catch one. So Daishi being really, really intelligent about these mines. So Robo's now on the way, which we can see on the production tab, but he doesn't quite know that yet. That's pretty obvious though, because you have to think, the Protoss doesn't really know what's going on. Since he went for Twilight Council first, he has no ability to get an observer in there. He really has no information. He's just kind of doing this blindly. But you have to think eventually they're going to go for Robo. Eventually they're going to get observers. So that's a really common follow-up. Stargate really doesn't make any sense here. So Daishi's pretty safe in knowing that the follow-up has to be Robo in some capacity or another. Whether it's for observers or whether it's for Colossus or Immortals or something like that. That's got to be there. Nothing else makes sense. So you can see Daishi responding to this potential Blink all-in, or at least 2-base Blink attack. He's producing a tank here, which is really smart. It's going to zone out a lot of the stalkers. You can kind of position it maybe about right here. This is kind of a crappy map for holding Blink all-ins, and you don't usually see this anymore, especially since this map is not in the map pool anymore. But the tank is really smart, the mines are really smart, extra bunkers. You can see he's reacting exactly how he's supposed to the Blink play that's coming down here from San. And again, this mine being out here is in such a weird position that they probably won't expect it to be there, and it should get a decent hit off, I would have to say. But the counter drop is always a real possibility. So the other thing that we didn't quite touch on here that could have been a really big problem, now that I'm thinking about it, is he saw this Twilight Council researching. But if you scanned a Twilight Council that was just sitting there and it wasn't doing anything, then you do need to get turrets out for DTs right away. So that was one thing that we kind of skipped over, but something you do want to pay attention to in your own games. So let's continue to fast forward here. Observers coming out now for the Protoss, and you can see the SCV just walks right up here to figure out what's going on. And if there wasn't any units back at home, he would know that he's about to get attacked. But since there were units just sitting there with this SCV, then you can make the assumption that, okay, I'm safe for quite a while. I can probably just take a third command center and play it out from there, which you can see he does have the money for, but he's opting not to do that right away. From this point, all you need to basically follow up on is, what is this robo producing? Is this robo going to be just for observers, or is it going to be for Colossus? If it's for observers, they're going to probably get into a lot more gateway-based unit composition, and sometimes into Templar, so you need to know what your response needs to be from that point. So if it winds up being Colossus, you're going to want a third base sooner rather than later in either circumstance. But if it is Colossus, then you do want to start up an extra starport and get your Vikings out as soon as humanly possible to deal with that. If it's Templar or a lot of gateway units, you can safely go into Ghosts or just stay off of Vikings altogether so that you can just micro your way out of that. But the other big thing here is that if he was able to see these 2 forges, then he would know that this is not going to be some sort of 2-base gateway all-in or something like that, which is still possible. So you do want to continue to rescout here. If you ever see somebody getting 2 forges, or at least investing a lot into upgrades, then you can rule out any sort of really fast attack in the next little while. So, like I've been saying for quite a while, the right play here from Daishi is probably just to build a command center here on the high ground and continue to verify there's nothing weird going on and try to respond to the tech that comes out of the Protoss. And then from there, this matchup just isn't developed enough to go into much later game units than, you know, Templar, Colossus, to which you need Viking, Ghost, and you need to control properly to deal with that. So I guess that's good enough for the first replay. We're going to take a look at another one that's a little more normal. At least I'm pretty sure. I try to build these so that the replays show off 2 different types of openers and have slightly different scouting reads and ways to do this. So what we're going to see is Byong versus Myungshik. And Byong is a really interesting Terran. He's actually a very abusive Terran, but this replay in particular is a little more standard as far as what you might see, especially at the highest level. So, got their names and stuff up. I know all the keys. I'm the knower of things. Byong is the person we're going to want to look at, of course. We'll just put it on his vision, and oh my god, we don't want to look at that. So, what he's going to do right away, something that I really, really like, is he's sending an SCV scout out immediately. This is just to rule out any sort of really fast gateway or proxy or something like that, and he will be walling, so that if there's any sort of like 1-gate proxy or something like that, he's going to be well prepared for something like that. And again, like I've said in other videos, worker scouting is going to get you the most information possible, so it's really never a bad idea. So first SCV coming out here, and actually, wait a second, I think I remember this game now. He actually proxies a barracks, so this is something else you can do that's a little cute. But this is just going to be for Reaper, and this is, like I was saying, is a very abusive and manipulative Terran, so this is something that he would do. But either way, this is going to be for Reaper, and the majority of this is going to be to maybe kill a couple of probes, but more importantly, try to throw Myungshik off of his build, and to, more importantly, figure out what the Protoss is trying to do. So these Reapers will get in there right away. You can see the gas starting up immediately as soon as the barrack starts, on the same supply, in fact, which is what you're going to want to do for Reaper. So this scouting information we're going to go over is the same both for in this game and if the barracks is in your main. So nothing too outlandish. You can't expect to just end games off things like this unless the Protoss just really messes up. So that's all this is for, is just faster scouting. You can even just walk in here with the SCV, and look at this. He's actually going to see a second gas being taken. So this is a big deal. This means a much higher tech before expansion. So he should be expecting something like Stargate, or maybe a Blink play, or something like that. Robo before Nexus on 2 gas doesn't make any sense. Maybe even DTs, so you need to be looking out for things like that as well, and that's why these Reapers are going to prove useful, because they're going to be scouting in here over and over and over again, since they're so quick and since they're so close to the enemy base. So Reaper comes out here, and if you're lucky, and if the Protoss messes up, you can get some workers, so he does get 1 so far to make that, and since this barracks was so close, he has a lot of time to deal with anything that comes out. And now the Mothership Core is coming out, so all this gas being mined is being put to use. Something that's a little cute, but something you probably won't run into too much, is he is picking off the gas probes. Considering he does have 2 gas, it's obvious he wants to mine a lot more gas than usual. So killing those gas probes are going to slow him down even further. But still, he's getting a lot of information. He's going to come over here and double check that there isn't a Nexus, and no, he does not see anything. So the Reapers are basically giving him everything he wants now. He can take a command center on the low ground, since he knows that there's nothing too wild coming up right now. And the Reapers should keep some units there for quite a while as well. But in the meantime, now is about the time, maybe 5 minutes, where you're definitely going to see the tech that they're going for. So we can even just sit here and watch on the production tab and just watch for the tech to come down. But Byung needs to be on top of knowing what tech that is. And we didn't miss anything, yeah. So yeah, there's nothing really too alarming going on right now. We'll put us back in the dark. The Reapers, though, you do want to scout them around, have them scout around here, because the 2 gas, you know that something has to be going on. Some sort of higher tech before expansion. So scout around with your Reapers and try to figure out if they proxied anything, because if they did, then maybe you can shut it down before they even produce anything out of it. So we'll keep going here. And you do want to eventually rescout here into the main. Myungshik is going to go ahead and take a Nexus, but anybody that knows Myungshik knows that he goes Stargate every single game. So that's going to be the tech that we're going to see coming down here, which you can see makes sense on the resources as well. And I am wrong, it's the Twilight Council, so I guess he decided to switch things up a little bit, which doesn't make sense considering his gas mining, but either way, this is kind of similar to last game in the sense that he's opening up with the Twilight Council. And maybe blink once again. But this is obviously, the reason I wanted to show this is there's a very different set of reactions and different set of plays, whereas before, the scan kind of revealed everything. He does know there's a Nexus down by now, but he had mines out, he had tank production ready to go. It's a very different circumstance if this is indeed blink. So Barracks coming back down here and landing. Tech Lab researching stim right now. You can see the Stalkers are pretty aggressive about pushing this away, and this is about the time, maybe 6:30 to 7 minutes, where you need to save a scan and use it to figure out what the Protoss is doing. So this just finished. I would not be shocked at all if he dropped a scan right here when that time comes up. So we can even just sit here and watch, because that's what we should be doing.
Complete.
Right? No, he dropped a mule. Okay, he's being extra greedy here, so I don't know what the deal is with that, but he needs to figure out what's going on here as soon as possible. So I would not recommend this. I think Byung is really trying to cut corners. But either way, the Reaper's going to come up here and scout it. So the Reaper sees the extra gateway, second gateway, and blink researching, which you can see by these lights coming up here really fast. And there's no reason to chrono boost enough to eat Twilight Council unless they're really trying to fake you out. So he knows everything that's going on either way. Getting pretty fortunate by scouting that with the Reaper rather than spending that scan, which the scan would have seen everything anyway. So Byung now has to react to this blink coming up here. Extra bunkers are what the doctor ordered, so he should be totally fine on that. You can just load these with maybe 1 Marauder and then just run your Marines back and forth just to try and keep those closed down. If you can get a tank out, that will really help. If you can get any mines out, that will really help. But the bottom line is he knows what's going on, he knows exactly how he's supposed to react. So we'll just go ahead and continue past here. And again, we're to the point where, yeah, blink is the opener, but we need to figure out what the follow-up is. It's always going to be Robo, nothing else makes sense. So we don't see the Robo coming down quite yet, and that's, I think, because Myungshik knows that there's no sort of factory play coming out of Byung quite yet. So you can maybe squeeze out an extra Stalker or two before getting that Robo. But the only thing that makes sense is a Robo coming up afterward for some capacity, either for observers or Warp Prisms or something like that. And they needed to see, is it Colossus or is it Templar that he's following up with? So this blink attack's going to go on for quite a while, actually. It's not that important to the game, actually, or at least to our video. But either way, like I was saying, Robo coming up now, that's the only thing that really makes sense. Getting his medevacs out, getting Stim. Stim's almost done. Once Stim finishes, there's usually a timing where you can just run these down. And now it's Colossus, so let's see how long it takes Byung to figure this out. Considering he now knows that the Protoss is basically going home, you can kind of poke out here up at the front to see if you can kill these pylons, and if nothing reports, then he's gone home, and he is teching, so you can figure out what that tech is. So Byung, again, he needs to scan, and he needs to figure out what's going on here. Last time he skipped it, so that was kind of silly. Let me see what he actually knows. Yeah, he doesn't really know anything, but still, you need to know, is it Colossus, or is it Templar, or is it just a big gateway attack that's following up here? So even by just seeing the forge, you would know that it's being pretty passive, but as soon as he gets that scan down, you'll know. And then, like I was saying before, once you get to this point where you can figure out their initial tech, whether it's Colossus or Templar, they're eventually going to be supplementing one tech with the other. So the late game will always be Colossus and Templar, along with any gateway filler units or whatever, and you need to be able to respond to that appropriately. So another thing that I'm going to show really quickly is that you can scout via aggression. So If you scout by a drop and you can see these buildings, then that'll save you a scan. If you can scout and see that immortal production is beginning, sometimes that can mean stuff and sometimes it can't. Usually you won't start a lot of immortals before you start your Colossus, so this is a little unusual. But either way, you can scout via some aggression, so you can figure out what's going on. And the 3rd Command Center, of course, starting for Byong right now. This is all really standard stuff, and I think the scan just went down. Yeah, now he sees the robotics bay, so now he should know how to react. He should basically just drop an extra starport behind this and start 3 Vikings at a time until his 3rd base is fully mining, just to counter those Colossus right away. So, I mean, this game is pretty much ran its course in terms of scouting. There's nothing else you really need to be too careful about, since you know that it has to devolve into Colossus and Templar from them, and you know the counters, which is Vikings and Ghosts. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this. I'll be back with more videos, and I think TVZ is supposed to be next for scouting, so look out for that, and I'll see you guys later.